Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace.
This is my Mitsubishi Delica, and about 3 years ago I converted it into a camper van, which is now my pride and joy. It's my landscape photography adventure mobile for one. It's taken me to some of the most beautiful locations in the British Isles, and last year I drove it all the way to Sweden to pick up a Hasselblad X-Pan. Now that was a big road trip, but that is nothing compared to what's coming next week. Before that, we need to prep the van because it's far from perfect. Now, I did quite a good job when converting this vehicle, if I do say so myself, and if you haven't seen any of those conversion videos, I'll pop a link in the description below, and I'll stick a link to my Sweden road trip, which was pretty epic actually, so yeah, you can maybe just go and watch them. In the meantime, between now and the massive adventure next week. So let's begin with the small quick fixes. Number one, the rear view camera is hanging off and that needs fixing properly. The second is this number plate. Now, when I drove to Sweden, the only questions I got at the borders that raised any concern was about this number plate, and in particular, this Made in Japan logo, which I thought looks quite cool, and I'm pretty sure it's legal here in the UK, but they questioned it last driving into the Netherlands and into Sweden. And my response was, this is a Japanese imported vehicle. And somehow I got away with it. But I don't want to chance my luck again. So I'm going to switch this number plate for a standard UK number plate. Now, inside of my van, I have lots of little storage units and cubby holes. There is a place for everything. And this here contains some kitchen and cooking stuff and some bathroom stuff in there. And it's a pretty good storage unit. But what really annoys me is if I do that, the whole thing comes off, and then basically, yeah, it's not good. So I need to find a better way of, well, this should be a pretty straightforward fix. I used hot glue to stick the back end of this down, and hot glue is not really good for anything where there's any forces involved, so a bit of wood glue should solve the problem. No issues at all. Now, one thing that I like to have on me on extended road trips, whether that's north of Scotland, driving to Sweden, or in this case, the massive road trip that's coming next week, is an extra jerry can of fuel, because this thing is very thirsty and it has a small fuel tank of only 50 litres, and it is easy to get caught out. But the problem with this is there's nowhere for it to go. Now, I'm not overly happy having fuel inside of the vehicle, but I don't mind it if it's in the back. The problem is this doesn't fit. And even if it were to go in it would take up so much room that I wouldn't have any space for all the important stuff like camera gear and food and beer and that kind of thing. So I thought about making a mount. Let me darken you down a touch. Yeah, I thought about making a mount here. Quite easy, straightforward. Wouldn't be much of a problem at all just to pop this on like so. But then, of course, the problem is the gas struts on this tailgate are not the strongest, and when it gets a little bit cold, they can barely hold the weight of the tailgate, let alone this. Oh, so that only leaves one option really, and that is somewhere on the roof of the van. Now, the problem is I've got a solar panel and I've got this little case which I carry all kinds of gear in. Both of these are pretty much essential, and there's not much room for anything else. Now, I reckon I can just about squeeze this fuel can between the solar panel and the roof box. But of course, I'm not going to leave it resting on the roof itself, so I need to create some sort of frame between the roof bars and then mount it in and make sure that it's all secure. So that's the next job. So this should be pretty straightforward. I've got these two steel L bracket things here. I'm going to lay these across the roof bars, cut them to size, bolt them down, and the space between should be big enough to hold the jerry can, which I will then strap down. Alright, so whilst we wait for the paint to dry, I'm just on my way to Adventure Motor Vehicles. Those are the guys who imported this van from Japan, and they've looked after it ever since I've owned it. Now, one of the jobs they're going to do is fix the air conditioning, which broke last year. Now, the location I'm going to, I might not necessarily need the air conditioning, it might not be that hot, but getting there, I almost certainly will need the air conditioning. They're going to do a service on the van, and they're going to give it a thorough inspection and look for anything that might cause problems on my journey. And finally, they are going to make one modification that is going to transform the looks of the vehicle, and a modification that I think will come in very handy with where I'm going to. So, here we are, and I've got to say, I'm very excited for how the van's going to look in a couple of days.
Alright, so the van has been up on the lift for a brief inspection before all the work gets carried out, and I've just been handed the kit, the kit for the modifications that we're going to do to Delhi. Let me show you. So we are going to fit a snorkel to Delhi. Now the place that I'm driving to is going to be incredibly dusty, and there's going to be a lot of river crossings, or certainly potential for a lot of river crossings. Now I don't think we're going to go anything deep enough that is going to put us in any danger, but by fitting a snorkel just gives us that extra security to know that if we get a bow wave that comes over the bonnet, or if we do hit a deep spot in a river crossing, or the water levels rise unexpectedly, which probably isn't going to happen, then we're going to be fine. We're not going to suck water into the engine, which is the big risk. Now the chances are any river crossings are going to be incredibly manageable and fairly low waters, especially at this time of year. But you know, not only does it look cool, but it's just good to be cautious. I don't want to end up with a completely destroyed engine flooded out. So we're going to fit the snorkel, redo the air conditioning, service, health check, and yeah, it's going to be, I can't wait to see how it's going to look. And through the power of video editing, the van is complete. So I feel well and truly prepared for this road trip now, because we have had quite the extensive list of repairs done to this van. Just maintenance, upkeep, things that needed doing or look like they might need doing in the not too distant future. And yeah, it's, well, I'll show you. I've had 3 belts replaced in this engine: the auxiliary belt, the power steering belt, and the air conditioning belt, all brand new. We have full air conditioning, ice cold, recharged, regassed. Of course, we've had this snorkel fitted, but the thing with the snorkel is you've got to get the fitting just right. It's no good just putting a snorkel on and then plugging it into the air intake. What you've actually got to do is make sure that it's all sealed. So the job of fitting this was huge. Half the engine had to come out, because you have to be able to access the flexi-pipe tube that goes into the air intake and then properly seal it. It's pointless, absolutely pointless, having a snorkel if it's not perfectly sealed all the way through to the air intake. So that was a big job in itself. So at the back here, we've had new discs and new pads on these rear wheels. They look brand new, and as well as the discs and pads, we have put new drop links down here, new rear drop links, which is going to give us much better suspension. They were starting to wear a bit, and that's not good on some of the roads we're going to be driving on next week. As well as all of that, we've had the front stabilizer links done as well. So basically lots of work to the suspension to help make sure that that's well maintained. New gearbox oil, front brakes cleaned and lubricated. We've got new engine oil, full health check was carried out, and the van was even cleaned outside and inside. So I am very impressed with AMV's service, excellent as usual. Anyway, we're going to leave AMV now. I'm going to finish this video by looking at all of the accessories which I am taking with me, that I'm replacing. Basically, I've got tons of accessories in a camper van, and I've got some new ones, and basically been buying lots of new toys. All right, so whilst the work was getting done on the van, I managed to complete my fuel, my jerry can holder, which is right here. So get this on. So it's fairly straightforward. It's just going to sit here between the roof box and the solar panel, and the jerry can will just slot in like so, and then obviously we'll use two straps, like ratchet straps, to strap it down, and it'll be bolted here and at the far end there. But that's going to be fine, I think. And worst case scenario, if I do have problems with it, well, I'll just chuck it inside the van, which is actually something I'm going to have to do because it's just starting to rain, predictably. Anyway, we've got so many toys inside this van. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am. Right, let's start at the front of the van from here, the driving position. So anybody who makes videos by themselves and tries to tell a story will tell you how difficult it is to film and capture a car journey, a road trip. You know, from the driving position, trying to capture that experience is incredibly difficult. Now I do that by using this camera here that I'm recording on, mounting it on the windscreen facing me so I can hands-free talk to the camera. And then if I want to get a shot of the motorway or of the side of the window or the view, I'll turn it around and I'll move the suction cups, and it's an incredibly arduous, difficult job to do. And although you can capture some really nice looking footage, it's just so difficult to tell the story because you're constantly thinking about what's next and where do I move the camera, and it's just the camera is quite literally getting in the way, and that is not a good thing. So you may have noticed on a couple of my recent videos, I've got a solution. That solution comes in the form of this, a 360-degree camera, which I have mounted to my sideboard. This table that I made yonks ago for this passenger seat I put things on is affectionately known as my sideboard. But with the single press of a button, which is easy to do when driving, you don't need to think about anything, you don't need to find places to pull over and stop and move cameras around. Well, you can have a 360-degree view where I can quite literally pick and choose my frame after the fact. So I can film myself whilst driving along and talking to the camera. Hello, yes, nice to meet you all, welcome to a new video. And then I can spin the camera around and show at any time what's going on out of the window. So out that way, out the side way, back to me, move it around, keep it fluid. And it's a really great way of telling a story. I don't need to think about anything other than driving. That's it, one press of a button, job done. So this is going to revolutionize these road trip videos and just make my life so much easier. I've run into a few problems when using my phone overseas, and it's mainly to do with my network, which is 3. They will cut you off after 5 days of using your phone overseas. And then they'll send you a message saying, if you wish to extend your time abroad, please call this number, but you can't call the number because they've cut you off. It's utterly ridiculous, and that has happened to me twice. This time I've made sure that I've called them in advance to say, look, I'm going to be away for an entire month, you cannot cut me off. But I don't trust that that's going to happen, so we'll see about that one. So anyway, I realized on that trip that without a navigational backup, well, you're just foolish. So I've got myself a TomTom. It's just a cheap sat nav, but it's got built-in European maps. Now I don't plan on using this, but I'm going to keep it in the van just in case something happens with my phone. You want to know one of the things I hate most about this van? Honestly, of all the things in here, is this, my stove. I've really grown to hate this thing. It's that this bit comes off a lot, and then you've got to put it on and try and fasten it in place, and it never stays in place. It's an awkward size and shape, and this hose isn't long enough, so the gas bottle's always too close to the flame. It's wonky, the pans fall off it. Honestly, just this thing, anyway, I've got a replacement. Now before that, let me thank the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace. Now if you don't know who Squarespace are, they're an all-in-one website building platform. So I'm sure as a photographer, or maybe somebody who likes to travel a lot, you're going to want your own website. But it's very difficult to build a website. You need to know coding and programming, or it can be very expensive if you hire a web design company. But with Squarespace, you can do it all yourself using their very easy, intuitive drag and drop system. I know I've done it myself, and I was able to knock out a professional looking website in less than a day. If you've got all of your media and all of your copy ready, you can have a beautiful, professional looking working website in a single day. It's straightforward, and you can register your own domain as well. They've got 24/7 customer support, so if you can get stuck, you can just hit them up and ask for advice. Or what I always say is just go onto YouTube, watch a few tutorials, and you'll be away in no time. So if you fancy looking at that, go to squarespace.com/Heaton and you'll get a free try. If you like your free trial, use the offer code Heaton for 10% off your first purchase. Let me introduce you to the RidgeMonkey Pro Connect Quad Mini. Not sponsored in any way, shape or form. I purchased this myself whilst trying to find the perfect cooking solution for such a small van like this one. So essentially, there are two small foldable stoves here that can actually connect to one another, and they all just fasten onto a normal gas bottle like this. Here we go. Nice, simple burner. Designed for fishing, actually, so it's going to be perfect for compact stowage, and it gets really good reviews. Let's have a look at it. So here it is in its single burner form, or there's just this quick connect which you push in, and now it's a double burner. All right, let's have a look here. Oh yes, and this one. There we go, we are quite literally cooking on gas. Whew. Just in case you're not aware, the side door is wide open. Actually, for my next van accessory or van item, I'm actually gonna have to pop the kettle on. So there we go. So whilst the kettle boils, I will show you my next accessory, which is an AeroPress and a coffee grinder. Now, the reason I've bought these items is because actually I'm trying to cut back on coffee. You'll have to bear with me on this one. Basically, because I'm cutting back on coffee down to just a couple of cups per week, the coffee that I do drink, I want to be really good coffee. And I did my research, I looked into getting a coffee machine in here. The coffee I'm making at the minute with the pour over drip thing, it's a bit messy and it doesn't really make that good coffee. And it turned out that the cheap, humble AeroPress makes pretty much the best coffee out there. And it's clean, it's no mess, it's almost zero faff. So I got that, and I got a grinder. The reason I got a grinder is, well, like I've already mentioned, I want it to be the best coffee that I can possibly make in such a small van. The grinder gives you fresh beans. It also makes it more of an event. Do you know what I mean? It's good for the video, bit of ASMR grinding, if you're into that sort of thing. But it means that I'm not just gonna make a coffee willy-nilly. I'm gonna set 10 minutes aside. It's gonna be a process, and it's going to be very enjoyable. Of course, I've realized the error of my ways that I bought ground coffee instead of beans. I know, but it's a learning process. It's a learning process. So I'm going to enjoy my coffee, tidy everything away, and I have saved the very best accessory for last. And it's pretty cool, and it's actually going to make life so much better on the road. So for a trip like I'm undertaking next week, where I'm going to be on the road for up to 3 or 4 weeks, I definitely need more power. I cannot run out of juice on the road. So I reached out to EcoFlow and said, your products look great. Do you mind if I try them? Can I have a look? And well, they said yes. And I suppose that's the beauty of having a YouTube channel. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear anyway. I didn't buy these, but hey, I would, because, well, let's have a look. So these two items are going to make life so much better for me on the road on an extended trip like we have coming next week, because I don't have hookup on this van. I can't go into a campsite and just recharge everything. I'm reliant completely on the battery in this cupboard. And now these. Two different products, man.
Yeah, two products that work in harmony as one. The first product is the EcoFlow Delta 2, which is a 1024 watt-hour portable generator, or basically a massive battery. And the second item is the EcoFlow Delta 2 Extra Battery.
Now, there are many great things about using this setup. Of course, one of them is that you can basically piggyback one off the other just by using this cable and plugging the batteries to one another using the ports here on the side. These two batteries are connected and we essentially have 2,000 watt hours. So the plan is just to keep them neatly on my side parcel shelf. Now, just in case I have to make an emergency break, I will secure them to the seat back.
So there we have over 2,000 watt-hours of extra power at my fingertips, and the inverter inside the Delta 2 will allow you to draw 1,800 watts of power. That's double what I can draw from my current van battery.
So, one of the reasons that I reached out to EcoFlow about this product was because of the size and weight of it. You can see how small and easy it is to handle. And actually, the top here is a handy space to store things, like a mini tabletop, which I think will come in handy. So to give you another example of how this battery is going to help with my road trip, I'm going to be editing on the go. I'm going to bring a MacBook Pro with me, and the new MacBook Pro, it basically charges, or it powers from a USB-C cable, which means I can essentially charge my MacBook Pro without using the big brick, you know, the big brick plug that goes into your socket. I don't need that. Make sure you subscribe, by the way, because it's all starting next week. So you've got to subscribe so you can keep up to date with what is the biggest undertaking I have ever done. Actually, I'm more nervous than I am excited.
As well as those two massive 100 watt USB-C ports, there are 4 standard USBs, 2 of which are fast charge, 4 3-pin plug sockets, a 12 volt cigarette lighter port, solar input,
and this battery has what's called an extreme charge, which means if you plug this battery into a house socket, so your wall socket at home, it will charge in as little as about, I think it's, oh gosh, I forget the exact number. I'll put it here, but I think it's less than 2 hours. And that would be very handy if I was to go into a coffee shop. Maybe I could plug this in, or I have to say, I'd be very uncomfortable doing that. Well, that's it. There's not much more I could talk about. I can't put this off any longer. The van, she is ready. She is in good health. We've got all the accessories we could ever dream of for a comfortable trip, a trip where I can thrive and enjoy photography and make some great content and not be too stressed. Oh man, it's going to be good. I am still terrified, I really am. So make sure you tune in next week, where really the proper adventure begins.